Gen X grew up alone, surrounded by fear. Gen X grew up alone, surrounded by fear. Today's video that we are featuring comes from John Kotry's channel. His channel will be linked in the description, so you can go check him out and support him. And, the Gen X childhood was one where we were constantly surrounded by fear, our parents, making our lives miserable and feeling like the world was always coming to an end. Watching the video to fully understand how Gen X's childhood, fear based childhood, helped turn them into more resilient people. And now let's just go ahead and jump right into the video.
Generation is tough for their own reasons, and a lot of people will tell you the Gen Xers are tough because we grew up without any fear. By the age of 9, a lot of us had already watched Jaws alone in the theater. We graduated to Amityville Horror, Poltergeist, Friday the 13th, Faces of Death 1, 2, maybe even 3. Stephen King horror novels were our bedtime stories. We watched the space shuttle blow up with a teacher on board, and then went back to our multiplication tables as grade schoolers. We targeted each other with bottle rockets and Roman candles for fun. BB guns, with a 3-pump rule that nobody listened to. We jumped over the bodies of our very stupid friends on ramps made of splinter-filled plywood and cinder blocks, without any helmets or anything else that even marginally approached safety standards. But I gotta tell you, we're not tough because we grew up without any fear. We're tough because we grew up surrounded by fear. Came home alone and we're told the doorbell rang, hit the floor and pretend not to be there. Watch John Walsh tell us we could be plucked up at any moment and taken away from everything we know and love. And then confirm that fear by eating breakfast staring at the pictures of children that had been supposedly plucked up just like that on our milk cartons. Nuclear annihilation seemed an absolute certainty. Thank you, the day after. And the teacher assigning watching the day after as homework. That's a special kind of evil. No, Gen Xers, we're tough because we were surrounded, we lived in, we were completely and totally encapsulated in a world filled with fear. By ourselves, and learn to function anyway. That's what made us tough. That and the playgrounds designed to kill us.
Guys, when I was growing up, the boomers were absolute bullies. Absolute bullies. I'll give you a great example. So I'm basically in class one day and I'm like, working with one of the teacher's aides and we're learning about different things. And, we're learning about money. And I'm like 8 years old, and this is a very interesting story. And I was always ahead of myself a little bit. For example, we're learning about millionaires in the what was it? Back in the like early 1900s, and Rockefeller. And I said to the teacher, I said, "Wow, so $1 million back then would be like $1 billion today because the value of the money has changed so much over time." And she goes, "No, $1 million then would also be $1 million today. All right, you need to stop speaking. Don't ask these stupid questions. This is why you're having issues." And I'm like, "What?" And that hurt me so much. And it was like that was one of the things that made me afraid to ever ask questions again. What I didn't realize at the time is that I had stumbled upon the concept of inflation, but the idiot boomer likely didn't know what inflation, well, didn't understand the concept of inflation because everything was handed to them back then. The boomers were our first bullies. We would go to school, get bullied by the boomers, go home, and then get bullied by our parents. More boomers. We lived our lives in complete and utter fear. Going outside was scary. The world was scary. A lot of kids didn't make it home. Guys, we had movies back in the 90s, like, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was My Girl. And yeah, guys, that movie was really, really messed up. My Girl traumatized the hell out of me. So some Gen Xers are watching right now and they're like, "Yeah, you tell them about it." My Girl was a film about, a tomboy girl who basically moves to this place and she befriends this boy, and his name, is played by Macaulay Culkin. He did a really great job in the movie, and they're like the best of friends, and it's so awesome. And spoiler, he dies. And I think we like see, if I recall, I think we even like see his body in the film, and like they have to get his body prepared, and the mortician. It was so horrible. It was traumatizing. And then they made like a My Girl 2 after that, I believe. And by the by My Girl 2, she was just like she was a whole different person because like it really really left a mark on her. Like it you could tell that it kind of like like fucked her up psychologically, you know. I, I'm telling you, it was just it was total it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible because it's like it just we were constantly as kids. The boomers didn't hide anything from us. We were just constantly confronted with things like death. Death was a very very significant part of our childhood. We saw people dying. We were dragged to funerals of family, friends. I remember my mother dragged me to the funeral of one of my cousins, and I didn't want to go. She made me go anyway. And it was so traumatizing seeing my cousin laying dead in like the center. And this dude was a young person, and my mother could care less. And I would tell her how traumatizing it was, and she would just act like she didn't hear me. And I was like 6 years old. And I remember growing up. When I was growing up, there was a teacher who would, she was a member of the she was a member of the greatest. I think she was a greatest. She was definitely a greatest generation. Yeah, she was definitely a greatest generation. This woman was like a second mother to me, and she worked at my school. And everyone knew that this woman had been like a second mother to me. Well, I'm sitting in class, and this girl, because back then girls were annoying, comes in and says, says the little angry, and I was maybe around 8 or 9. No, no, no. I was going on 10. She says, because she wanted to hurt me, she says, "Hey, guess what? Mrs. Johnson just dropped dead downstairs." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah." So I go, I scream to my teacher, and I tell my teacher that this girl is screwing with me, and to, let this, deal with this girl right now, okay? Because she's just trying to mess with me. And the teacher's like, don't, hey, stop it. And she's like, "I'm not lying. She really is dead. She just drops dead downstairs." Oh God, it was guys. So of course, I find out, yeah, she really did die, and I ended up having to go and then I go to her funeral, and it was just like death upon death upon death upon death. By the time I was an adult, because I lived overseas, guys. I lived in a very there was a point where I lived in a very violent place, and there were always bodies everywhere, and it was always exciting. Like, oh my gosh, there's a body right there. There's a body right there. I remember I had to go get on a flight, and I just walked past the dead body. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look. I was like, there's a body right there. I don't know why I didn't take a picture. But at that point, it had just been so normal seeing bodies all over the place. And that was just the norm of it. Like we became very, very desensitized to death because of how we were raised. Our parents were monsters. They were absolute monsters. The boomers were terrible. And I'm telling you, I'm getting so annoyed with it. The boomers won't leave me the hell alone. Some days I just want to just block them all on the channel. And it's frustrating because there's some who it's a mixed bag with them. It's a mixed bag with them. They're bad people. They're bad people as a group. Maybe there's some decent ones, but as a group, they are horrible people. Most of the people that have had the biggest impact on my life and in shaping me into being the person that I am right now were members of the silent generation and the greatest generation. I am so fortunate for those people. I'm just being honest. I am lucky that I was raised. I'm lucky for the members of the silent generation and the greatest generation that were there and helped shape me and raise me growing up. Because if it wasn't for that, I would have been completely lost in life. Even now as an adult, it's still like, there have been points where I've come in touch with members of the silent generation, and it's because of these people why I'm able to like function, get some grounding and foundation of the world. And I'm not saying they're all great, perfect people, but there's some decent ones, especially compared to Gen, to the baby boomers. It was a member of the greatest generation. I guess he was had to have been the greatest generation. He gave me he I learned a lot about life from him. But my parents screwed me up so much that I couldn't even enjoy life. I could not enjoy life growing up because of the boomers. The boomers were such a miserable group of people. You know, being able to have a drink of beer, have a sip of beer, watch wrestling, just chill. Guys, a lot of us were constantly on the edge because our parents were just real monsters. The boomers were monsters. Something was sick and sadistic and twisted about them because they grew up because their lives were so easy. Honestly, they wanted to torture people, and they really tortured their kids. If you look at what Gen Z is doing on social media, they're torturing their kids. They're extremely abusive parents. They're doing terrible things to their kids. They're traumatizing their kids. Gen Z, they're doing it for fun, and they're posting videos online. Let me make this clear. We have instances right now where Gen Zers are also deleting their parents. Yeah, you heard it. You heard me. They're deleting their parents. Control alt deleting them. I made a video about it recently where some Gen Z scumbag, he was going to college. His mother was just she was like a year or two older than me. And he was in college. He dropped out of college after 5 days. His mother, she had worked very hard. I think she had gotten her PhD, and she was just now like the vice president at a university. She had a lot more work to do. She had worked so hard to get there, and this is one of the reasons why you have to be so careful with these kids. And basically, she told him like he became a hikikomori, not in employment, not in education, employment, or training. Right? They have them over in Japan, and Gen Zers are around the world are becoming like this. So and he was a hikikomori, so basically a complete shut-in. He was lazy, he was nasty, and she gave him an ultimatum that he would basically begin helping with chores around the house, or she gave him an eviction notice saying that he would start helping with chores around the house and look for a job because he was just sitting around doing nothing. And keep in mind, she people said that her and he was her entire world. He basically deleted his mother. He deleted her because of that eviction notice. She didn't really want to kick him out because he was her entire world, but she wanted him to get up and do something. The scumbag deleted her. It hurt so bad for me, and I know many of you guys. It appears that she was a single mother, but she had really done. I don't know where his father was. All right, it was probably Chad's baby. Okay, it was probably Chad's baby, and Chad. One of the big problems with Chad and Tyrone. Women go and they run around with these dudes, and they're like, "Oh, we want to have Chad and Tyrone's baby," but these are low value men, and they're bad genes. So, for example, these are idiots. So they have children by these men who are brutes, and they don't realize that they're not getting the best genes. They're bringing children into the world who don't have any value and cannot provide and cannot protect and cannot do anything. So even if the guy was muscular or he was a Tyrone or whatever, it doesn't matter because women are still the way that women are programmed right now mentally. They're attracted to low value men. It's like something left over, I think, from our evolution where women would basically deviate towards the caveman, like the guy who was ooga booga, like the guy that was very violent, the guy that was very muscular, the guy that was very thuggish. These were the types of men that traditionally would survive in a very chaotic environment because hunting and so forth. But a lot of women are not even using common sense and reason. To be clear, Chad and Tyrone, even in ancient history, going back to to those times, in a structured society as villages developed, they weren't the ones who survived. The ones who survived were the ones who learned how to use tools, build tools, how to hunt properly, how to use your head. The best hunters are not the biggest and strongest hunters. The best hunters are the ones who are the most intelligent, the ones who are the most patient, the ones who are the most disciplined, something that Chad and Tyrone are not. So modern women, they fell in love with these men, and they basically wanted to have the babies of these men without realizing that these are very low value men. And that's something that's really left over. But they get into relationships with these guys, and then that happens. But yeah, these good for nothing Gen Zers, they are deleting their parents now, and it hurts so bad because she was my age, and I'm like looking at her and like, bro, this is crazy. And he basically deletes his mom because she told him that he's gonna have to go get a job and clean up after himself. And then he calls the police, and they come and take him out, haul him off to jail. And he's like in front of the judge saying that the only person who can explain what happened and why it happened is me, and he could give less of a rat's ass. These Gen Zers are really mentally ill. Like, we have to just acknowledge that they are really mentally ill. A lot of them are like, mental illness trend. They find it trendy, and they're constantly trying to like, oh my god, like fake mental illnesses. But as a whole, they are mentally ill. These are sick little muffins, sick little muffins, and they want you to know that they're sick. They want you to know that they're sick because that's basically their means of being able to go and get Social Security disability or SSI disability on the grounds that they are mentally ill. These are good for nothing muffins that want to live off the state, don't want to work, and contribute anything to society. They are absolutely terrible people. They're not good people. They're bad little muffins. Bad little muffins, guys. When I say I cannot stand Gen Zers, I cannot stand Gen Zers, okay? When you're Gen X grew up with so much fear around them. Gen X grew up with such hardship. Gen X grew up knowing that, when we went out as Gen Xers, we never knew if we were going to make it home. Like, we never knew if this was going to be our last day, you know, on this earth. I'm just being so honest. Like, people wonder, like, why did Gen X just disappear? Gen X just disappeared because we want to be left alone to process all of the crap that's happened around us. But even then, we still have to be resilient and own our stuff, own our shit.
That Gen X is just disappeared in the abyss. Like, what are they doing?
Your mysterious inquiries into the whereabouts of Gen X only highlights our perpetual state of invisibility. We've grown accustomed to being overlooked like yesterday's leftovers, except when it comes to family gatherings and free babysitting. Let me set the record straight. Are we working? You bet your avocado toast we are. We've been working since before our tiny little hands could tie our shoelaces. And we'll be working until we take the long dirt nap. Since we were kids, we've been shoveling the snow, mowing the grass, wrangling every unruly ankle biter in the neighborhood, and running our own cleaning businesses. Because as kids, we didn't have the luxury of leisure. We were scrubbing toilets, mopping floors, dusting furniture, and doing dishes from the meals that we cooked. When it comes to family gatherings, barbecues, and babysitting grandkids, excuse us if we're not jumping for joy. We've been there, done that, and we're fucking tired. We've spent decades shouldering adult responsibilities, juggling other people's shit, and being the responsible ones. Now it's our turn to sit back and just enjoy a little peace and quiet. And as for the picking up the slack, honey, we've been hustling since before you knew what hustle meant. Holding down jobs, paying bills, and keeping the economy afloat before you were even a twinkle in your parents' eye. So you go ahead and pick up that slack, because it's not our slack to begin with. We've paid our dues, and as for actively participating in society, we're just doing the things that we want to do and not what people expect of us. We're right here sipping on our cocktails, taking long naps, and enjoying the sound of sweet, sweet silence.
And guys, this is one of the reasons why, Gen Z hates Gen X so much, because Gen X are so resilient. They look at Gen X and they're like, oh, you guys have it easy. It's not that Gen X has it easy. It's just that Gen X has learned how to cope. All right? Cope with the hardship, cope with the pain, cope with the suffering, cope with the stress. Gen X is more stressed out than other generations, but they are also more resilient, and they have the resources to cope with the crap. The reason why is because they know that life isn't fair, no one cares, and either you're going to have to suck it up and find a way to survive, or you're not, or you're going to die. Or you're going to die. Basically, that strength comes from our childhoods. centered around pain, suffering, misery, bit of destitution, and so much more. All right, we were poor kids growing up. 100%, we were poor kids growing up. And by the way guys, this is actually a 30-minute video. If you want to watch the full video, you can watch the full extended video, which is available in the Angry Guy Clubhouse on Substacks, and that's linked in the description. So if you want to watch the full video going forward, you can watch the full video linked in the Angry Guy Substacks. um, I mean, and so go ahead and head over there right now if you want to keep on watching, guys. I don't know. Gen X had it so hard. We had it so hard, and yet we made the best of a bad situation, because we knew that we were going to have to hustle, we were going to have to grind, we were going to have to push forward. We knew that there was no one that was going to come and bail us out and save us from the misery and the hardships of the world. you know Guys, but I will tell you something about life. While life was hard, this when you had, it was the small things really meant even more for Gen X. They absolutely meant even more. you know it meant so much more, because you had so little that when you actually got something, you felt very grateful to have it. You felt so grateful to have it, and you just really enjoyed it. Gen Z can't really enjoy anything.